Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the March 18th, 2014 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my distinct privilege and honor to call this meeting to order. There are copies of our agenda on either side of the room. If you haven't already done so, I would welcome you, or encourage you actually, to pick up a copy and follow along with our proceedings tonight. There will be multiple opportunities for public comment, both with respect to items that are on our agenda tonight, as well as a segment under item 4 on our agenda, which is reserved for questions and comments of a general nature with respect to things that are not on our agenda tonight. Now, since some of you have already asked, I'll just say this right up front. We will be having a conversation later tonight of an item that is on our agenda regarding the amendment to Chapter 5 of the Municipal Code concerning animals and fowl. That discussion will actually be held next door in the committee room, so we can have a more informal workshop type discussion. So what we will do is we'll proceed through the rest of our agenda tonight, and then we will have a sort of a light adjournment and move next door and continue our conversation, just so everyone knows what to expect. It is our custom to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. So at this point, I would invite everyone present to please rise and join us in reciting the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much, and happy primary election day as well. I'd now like to ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Rankin?
Here.
Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. And before we discuss, let's take care of our minutes first. Item number 3 on our agenda pertains to minutes of prior council meetings. We have one set of minutes to review and approve tonight. Those are our minutes from our regular meeting of March 11th, 2014. Do any members of the village council have any questions or comments with respect to those minutes? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Those minutes are approved. Now I'd like to pause. I said a moment ago that today was significant because, of course, it is March 18th, 2014, which happens to be a primary election day here in our state, and also, of course, in Downers Grove. But March 18th has a very somber significance in the village of Downers Grove. That was the date, exactly 40 years ago today, that the only officer to be killed in the line of duty in Downers Grove, Officer Richard Barth, was killed. We remember him and celebrate his life and take lessons from his death and appreciate the service that he has given, as well as other first responders, both before and now and in the future, here in Downers Grove and elsewhere. Of course, during the annual ceremony that's held at Barth Pond, which is named in his honor. It's a terrific, moving ceremony, very somber, uplifting ceremony in many ways, notwithstanding the fact that it does recognize and acknowledge the only police officer ever to be killed in the line of duty in the village of Downers Grove. We do that every year. If you haven't had the opportunity to make it out to Barth Pond at Patriots Park for that ceremony, it is typically held during the week that is dedicated to law enforcement, and particularly recognizing those who have lost their lives in the line of duty. Sadly, just yesterday, there was an officer in an adjoining community that lost his life in the line of duty. It happens more than we would like to have happen. What I would like to do, and at the suggestion of Commissioner Neustadt and some other of my fellow commissioners, is recognizing today is the 40th anniversary to the day of the slaying of Officer Barth by a couple of criminals in Downers Grove. Is I'd like to ask every one of my colleagues and all staff attended here to please observe a moment of silence. Thank you. I appreciate you doing that in Officer Barth's honor. We will not forget. That moves us on to item 4 on our agenda. As I mentioned earlier, item 4 on our agenda is reserved for questions and comments of a general nature with respect to items that are not appearing on our agenda. If any members of the audience at this time have any questions or comments of a general nature, we would ask that you please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we would welcome hearing from you. Are there any questions or comments of a general nature from anyone in the audience? Hearing none. Seeing none. A couple people are thinking about it, but hearing no questions, we'll move on to Item 5, council member reports. This segment of our agenda is dedicated to give members of our council an opportunity to report out on various goings-ons within the community and other items of general interest. I'll start tonight with Commissioner Jose.
I have no report, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Rankin?
No report, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Durkin?
Thank you, Mayor. I do have something, it's not necessarily a report, I'll just a feeling, opinion that I have. I know I've shared this with the manager last week after we got done discussing the facilities needs that our village has. And with tonight's announcement that we're going to be moving to the room next door for our meeting, I would ask before we start moving meetings around, especially when they have significance, importance, just like the chicken or fowl ordinance, that we maintain staying in here for the simple reason that it's broadcast, it's recorded video-wise, and it can be broadcasted, and others that aren't able to be here are able to see and hear what we do and discuss here. So I would just ask for future that we can look at staying in this room. I know it is a little more formal than what we want, but in the act of all transparency, I would ask that we look hard at doing so.
I appreciate the comment. I know we've gone around and around this over
have.
the years. Some will remember back in the days when we had separate workshop meetings and council meetings. The council meetings were held in here and the workshop meetings were held in the committee room. There were cameras, I believe, at one point in time, although it was rather cramped to fit all that equipment in there. But that was obviously important because the workshop meetings were also on television. And then, of course, they've, for a number of years now, have been consolidated into one meeting where we don't do that. We've held different standing committee meetings. Just so everyone is clear, and I think your words are appreciated because obviously there's a high level of expectation and interest in anything that we do, that the only reason those meetings have been held in another room is to try to foster a more relaxed and informal environment. So rather than being very formal and sitting around the dais, it was to encourage and foster actual open and informal discussion amongst members of the council on the topics in the interest of enhancing and facilitating the advancement of the public business in that regard. But this comment is well stated. Just generally, I think over the more than 10 years that I've been involved, different with the village council. I think just different people have different levels of comfort and engagement, whether they're in here or they're next door, there's a camera, there's not. I don't think it has anything to do with a desire, and I know you weren't suggesting this, of trying to keep something less transparent.
No.
It was more to foster more open
Correct.
and informal, interactive discussion, with the idea of then bringing those items, which in almost all cases when we have those workshop discussions, no formal or final action is taken. There's a discussion, and then before anything is voted on, and it's almost, I can't think of an instance where it isn't done at the dais and while being recorded, both audio and visual. But I appreciate the suggestion, and I'm more than happy to entertain that with my colleagues. If everyone would rather stay here, that'd be just fine with me. It's whatever.
Well, no, I'm not saying that tonight, only because from past experience, we all know how staff prepares the room for the meeting. So
Right.
it may not work tonight, I'm just saying for future, especially in light of with the needs we have for the new facilities. You know, I mean, I really want to make sure that we stay in front of that, and that's where it all stems from.
Sure, understood.
And I
Understood.
appreciate you explaining thoroughly the history and the reasons behind, so thank you.
And I also understood your comment to not suggest that we can't retire to another room to have a more informal discussion, but simply that recording equipment be available to maintain the same level of subsequent review and engagement by members of the community, which obviously is a high action priority item that we have.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more?
No, I've used plenty of my time.
Is that enough? That's all right. I think Commissioner Jose and Commissioner Rankin ceded their time to you.
Oh, thank you.
Commissioner Barnett.
I have no report, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, I just want to say that I do agree with Commissioner Durkin, and you know, the ways we can do that, I think that would be excellent to think about that. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Fine with me. You can put me down for all the above. It's fine with me. I have no problem with that. Commissioner Newstead.
Thank you, Mayor. Last week, Manager Fieldman and I attended the DuPage Mayors and Managers Conference Budget and Operations Committee meeting. It was actually held at Lyle Village Hall in their newish council chambers. It was interesting to hear some of the perspective of having a new chambers and some of the high-techness of that room. But I wanted to bring this up tonight because with Dave's leadership on this committee and through the organization and the COGS changing of bringing Downers Grove and Downers Grove's kind of methodology to their organization, we were able to find a way as a committee to suggest to the executive board to look at the debt service that the Mayors and Managers Conference is holding in a way that will actually refund and manage the dollars much better for the entire membership of the organization. I just wanted to give a special thanks to Manager Fieldman because I believe it was a team effort, but it was raised under his turn at the wheel, if you will, and it's really going to be a great outcome for all of the members of the committee of the conference. So it was a group effort. The DuPage Mayors and Managers staff came up with the information and provided some valuable information for us to decipher, and the committee came up with an idea that we could take care of the outstandingness of the loan for their building. So it was a great work, and I appreciate all the extra work that Manager Fieldman put in on our behalf. And the organization is growing and learning from our leadership in it. So thank you, Mayor Tully, and thank you, Manager Fieldman, for your extra time in that organization. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for sharing that, and I think just to put a finer point on it, I think there'll actually be a direct financial benefit
Absolutely.
from Fort Downers Grove as a result of that effort. It's not us alone, but
Once the numbers and beans get counted, I believe it will be a significant financial benefit for
Right.
our organization.
that's what we anticipate. Well, that is another one of our high priority action items, is leveraging our membership in an organization, not only for our benefit, but also for the benefit of the more regional approach that we all embrace now throughout DuPage County. Thank you. I have nothing further to report at this point in time, so we can move to item 6, which is reserved for public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we will go right to item 7, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience with respect to any items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, any questions or comments from anyone on the village council with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Aye. Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda has been approved unanimously. Brings it to item 8, our active agenda. We have no items on our active agenda, so just like that, we have item 9. And as mentioned, when we get to item 9D as in David, we will be coming back to that later for a more informal discussion next door. Let's begin with item 9A, as is customary for items that are under our first reading or our workshop agenda, which is mentioned earlier, are reserved for more informal discussion and consideration, no action at this time. We typically ask village staff to introduce the items for that discussion, so I will turn the microphone over to Village Manager Dave Fieldman. Good evening.
And as I typically do, Mayor, I'm going to turn right around and introduce Tom Daybreiner, our Community Development Director, who has a few items, actually the first 2 items on tonight's first reading agenda. Tom.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
My 2 items tonight actually are both mandates from the state or requirements from the state, and they're both up for discussion tonight. So the first one has to do with an ordinance that's been prepared for the adoption of the official 2014 Downers Grove zoning map, and we are looking for approval at our next council meeting on the active agenda on April 1st. State law does require a routine annual adoption of the official zoning map. There were 7 changes approved by the Village Council last year in 2013. Here is the draft map and the 7 changes. There was one on Highland Avenue that you'll recall, one down on 75th, and it was a change to commercial status. Similarly, one on Warrenville Road. The one on Indianapolis was a residential change, rezoning on Ogden, and just running through these quickly. This is the Sliff property, which was a rezoning to residential, and then one on Bel Air. Really a pretty straightforward process. We do it every year. If you have any questions, be happy to try to answer.
Thank you for the presentation and for describing the discretion that we have in which to do this or not.
I just wanted to lay that out right up front.
Understood. Any questions or comments from any members of the audience? Questions or comments from the Village Council? Commissioner Barnett?
Does this preclude us from doing it again this year?
No, not at all. I mean, obviously, we did 7 rezonings last year. There will be rezonings this year, probably of the same nature and who knows what else, but it doesn't stop us. It just is a requirement to adopt a formal map at a certain point in time.
Okay. My colleagues, I'm sure, know where I'm headed with that, so making sure we're clear.
Yes. Fortunately, I don't think this is where the sun and the moon have to be perfectly aligned, and we have 1 hour in which to do it, or it's forever foreclosed.
You just never know.
Pardon me?
You just never know. There are
Well, fair question. There's certainly stranger rules and requirements in Springfield than that. Thank you. Any other questions from any members of the village council?
Shoot. Let's see here.
Go ahead, Tom.
All right, thank you.
I thought there was an editorial. That brings us to item 9B.
Right. This one is, again, an ordinance that's been prepared amending certain portions of Chapter 7, which is the building code for the Village of Downers Grove, to adopt radon mitigation standards for new residential construction, and this is in accord with the State of Illinois Radon Resistant Construction Act, which requires us to adopt these rules and enforce them. Staff is recommending approval on April 1st again. Illinois Radon Resistant Construction Act was passed in June of last year. The Illinois Emergency Management Agency developed some rules that were finally issued in December. Radon is a radioactive element that's found naturally in the soil. This is a map of the state that shows, why this is an issue here. There's a large portion of the state where there is a significant amount of radon that's found in the soil, and then a couple areas where it's medium, and that includes far northeastern Illinois. The law itself requires that all new residential construction include passive radon-resistant construction. Here is a close-up of DuPage County, and then we've outlined in blue where Downers Grove is. Local governments are called in the law to administer and enforce this law. The village, therefore, must adopt the state's rules as part of our residential building code, which is the International Residential Building Code of 2006. So our proposal is to include this as part of the IRC appendices, which replaces really the same item that the International Code Council had provided that we had deleted previously. So this would replace that section. Again, we're seeking approval on April 1st. This is just a diagram that would show how this is done. It's really during construction put in right up front at the base. And you better seal up the basement, things like that, and the slab, and then extend a pipe to the roof above the roof line, and that helps to bring the radon away from seeping in through the cracks and into the house and up through and into the air. Be happy to try to answer any questions. Again, it's a state requirement, and we are called upon to administer and enforce.
Another discretionary item. Questions or comments from members of the audience? Commissioner Rankin?
So how does this affect people that are in progress? Is it just going to start with people that submit for permit after this is enacted?
The state law requires that we enforce the permit requirements that are in place at the time the permit is issued. So we have been doing this already, I guess unofficially. We've not been challenged.
For some time.
Well, since the first of the year. So we've included the requirement, and builders have been aware as well. There's been a lot of attention to this issue. So it really hasn't been an issue at all. It's $400 to $1,000. It really depends on the system, so as a percentage, it's not that big of a deal, but it's still an additional cost.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions from members of the council?
They test for this when you buy a new home that's built prior to the new codes and stuff, right? I mean, 'cause I thought they tested when we bought our home for this radon, right? I mean, they do that. Is that a state law or is that a village law when they do that testing?
Well, it's not a village law.
Inspection.
And it's usually at the request of the home purchaser. I don't believe
Yeah,
it's
it's not a mandate.
Oh, it's not?
No.
What if the lender requests it?
It's usually on the inspection checklist.
Okay.
Many lenders do request or require that.
Okay.
No one's going to ask about whether radon is an alpha emitter or a beta or gamma emitter. I'm not going to get into that.
You know, I'm certified in radon mitigation, so I've got it covered if you have any
All right,
questions.
great. Which can only hurt you if you inhale it. but- Any other
Open
questions?
the window, right?
Does that put you at ease? Yeah, open a window.
Open the window?
Burn a candle.
All right. Enough on epidemiology.
Thank you.
We go to item 9C.
Which is a motion awarding a contract for the construction of our water main improvements known as Contract A. And here to present information on this item is our Public Works Director, Nan Newland.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.
Good evening. This is a motion requested to award a contract for the 2014 water main construction, Contract A, to Swallow Construction of Downers Grove in the amount of $902,246.70. This is the first of a couple of contracts you'll see this year that will include water main replacement. This one is for about a half mile of water main replacement in the village on 41st Street from Earlston to Glendenning, on Highland from Grant to Chicago, and on Grant from Highland Avenue to Washington Street. Like I said, you'll see Contract B soon, the next month or so, and then we'll do some additional water main replacements with the Downers Grove Estates and Esterbrook subdivision replacements later this month, or next month. We did go out to bid for this project. We got 11 bids. Swallow was the low bidder, and they have successfully completed similar projects for the communities of Warrenville and Naperville, and they also have completed work for the village on Rogers Street in 2009, and on 2012, Oakwood Avenue storm sewer replacements, and did a good job for those projects, and staff recommends award of this contract to Swallow, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions or comments from members of the audience with respect to this item? Questions or comments from the village council?
No.
Commissioner Newstead?
These are just, this contract is just for straight water main. There's no other bundling of projects on this contract.
This is just water main, and it will have some water services, and then we'll come in later with our street maintenance contract and do the streets.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Rankin?
I just wanted to say, I noticed that you guys included a finish date of July 3rd, so that's good, because I was thinking about these locations and the 4th of July parade, and what a nightmare that would be with traffic and parking. And this Swallow, they are not the same contractor that did work for us for water mains last summer. Didn't we have an issue with notifying neighbors of turning off the water? And I don't know if anyone recalls that. We had some complaints. So I think this, they weren't.
I don't believe it was them on the contract last summer, no.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Other questions or comments? Any final questions or comments from members of the audience? Thank you very much.
And that ends for now our discussion of items on the first reading agenda.
All right, thank you. As a reminder, item 9D will be discussed next door, so let's get to that by getting through the remainder of the items. We'll move right to item 10, the mayor's report. I have no report at this point in time, other than I just want to point out that the date and time of the Officer Barth Memorial will be on Police Memorial Day, Thursday, May 15th, 2014 at 1 o'clock p.m. And again, that takes place proximate to Barth Pond in the village of Downers Grove. It brings us to item 11, the manager's report. Manager Fieldman.
No report tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item 12, attorney's report. Ms. Petrarca.
Thank you, Mayor. Two items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance adopting mitigation standards for new residential construction in accordance with the State of Illinois Radon-Resistant Construction Act, and an ordinance adopting and approving publication of the Village of Downers Grove 2014 zoning map. Both will be on the agenda for April 1st. Thank you, Mayor. That is all.
Terrific. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 13, council member new business. Do any members of the village council have any items of new business they would like to raise with the council at this point in time? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to adjourn to the committee room for a discussion of first reading item 9D as in David?
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Olson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin? Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Thank you. We are adjourned till next door. Good night, everyone, and good luck to all candidates running for office.